All right, you may be seated. Welcome to the senior thesis of Josh Patterson. I'm Steve Westfall. Joining me is Ron Miller and Rachel Harvey. Many thought this day would not come. But Josh has proven us wrong. So we're glad to hear what he has to say. I'll pray for him, and then I think we'll enjoy our time together. Father, thank you so much for Josh. Thank you for how you've made him and the things that you have done in his life and how you've ministered to so many through him and through his friendship and his fun. I pray that you would give him clarity of speech. I pray that you would just bless him as he seeks to share what he's learned and that we would enjoy this moment with him. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Music is a mystery. It is constantly changing with time, as culture does. The ever-changing complexity of sound pieced together to bring harmony and rhythm to life affects everything around us. It not only affects everything around us, it affects us personally. Music is a tool that can be used to understand more than just sound. The question is, does music have a positive or negative influence on the mind? Music, in and of itself, is an art form. The artist or composer is pouring out their thoughts and emotions and turning it into song. Music has the ability to speak to many different people on many different levels because of this. As an artist, you try to communicate to the audience in a way that words just cannot describe. We, as humans, we desire communication. That is why we pursue relationships with others. We desire to be heard or to learn from what others have to say. Artists earnestly desire the world to hear what they have to say. Composers often wrote music due to what was going on in the world around them. For instance, in times of trouble, like war, you can see the dramatic shift in the way music was written. 16th century reformer Martin Luther says, "Show me a generation's songs, and I will show you what they believe." The way music is composed is directly related to what is happening in the world. Culture affects the way people think and act and is one of the key factors in music development. It changes people's outlook on life and allows them to look at different aspects of life through different lenses. Music has the ability to stir up feelings in one person that can be present at the time or just completely out of the blue. It enhances emotions and brings those emotions to the surface. Emotion is what moves our hearts. It takes what we know to be true in our heads and moves it to our heart. It brings us to do things that we could never think or believe possible at the time. Daniel J. Levitin writes, "For the artist, the goal of the painting or musical composition is not to convey literal truth, but an aspect of universal truth that, if successful, will continue to move and to touch people, even as contexts, societies, and cultures change. For the scientist, the goal of a theory is to convey truth for now, to replace an old truth, while accepting that someday this theory too will be replaced by a new truth, because that is the way science advances. If artists and musicians are putting this new truth in your head, how much more important is it that we realize what that new truth is? Paul writes in Philippians 4:8, "Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things." Listening to music that does not speak truth, beauty, and goodness only brings destruction and instills the wrong thoughts in the mind. The fact is, your emotions are directly affected by different types of music in different ways. A 2013 study done in the Journal of Positive Psychology found that people who listened to upbeat music could improve their moods and boost their happiness in just 2 weeks. In this study, participants were asked to try and improve their moods, but only succeeded when listening to the upbeat music, in contrast to the people who had different results while listening to typically more sad music. Professor Thomas Urla of music cognition at Durham University monitored the study and wrote, "The results help us to pinpoint the ways people regulate their mood with the help of music, as well as how music rehabilitation and music therapy might tap into this process of comfort, relief, and enjoyment." The mind's ability to remember certain things are directly related to music. Oftentimes, the songs you remember the most have sentimental value. These songs can be connected with moments in your life. The human brain, when listening to music, reacts in many different ways. While music is being played, the mind instantaneously separates the melody of the song from the lyrics. The right side of your brain takes in the melody, while the left side pulls the lyrics from that. This is why people remember songs that they have not heard for years. Both sides of the brain are being used to store information from songs. It not only allows one to remember, but to create memories by attaching moments of life to songs. Majority of situations in life have a theme song, but one of the most monumental is a wedding song. Many couples choose to add a special song to them along with a traditional piece, allowing someone to connect to music to remember a certain time of day by just the sound of a song. Even people who have been affected with diseases that affect your memory, such as Alzheimer's or dementia, have been able to remember the music of their past. Studies show that when a patient with Alzheimer's listened to music of his past, he was able to see brain activity where it had been believed no brain activity was possible. Something similar is true for Parkinson's, which is a chronic and progressive movement disorder that initially causes tremors in one hand, stiffness, or slowing of movement. The beat and rhythm of music allows the mind and body to refocus and stop or ease the tremors in the patient suffering from Parkinson's. A similar idea can be seen in the Bible as well, when King Saul is being tormented and he has David come and play for him. And whenever the harmful spirit from God was upon Saul, David took the lyre and played it with his hand. So Saul was refreshed and was well, and the harmful spirit departed from him. Saul was refreshed by the Spirit upon David's playing and allowed him to be free. Music frees the mind of torment and gives a sense of relaxation instead. Alexander Romanowski said, "Music has this incredible power to liberate us, to immerse us in a state that rids us of unnecessary thoughts, feelings, and burdens. It brings our perception of this world into harmony." Many people may argue that music is made up of meaningless noise compiled together, that if you choose not to listen, that there is nothing that can be affected by your lack of listening. They may argue that abstaining from music actually clears the mind of useless storage of music, allowing you to be able to use your brain for more trying purposes, like trying to answer the question, what is justice? Plato had a similar experience with two men as they walked down the road trying to answer the age-old question of justice. "But can you persuade us if we refuse not to listen to you?" he said. "Certainly not," replied Glaucon, "though we are not going to listen, of that you may be assured. If we do not listen to music, how can it affect anything? Your brain is no longer being used to dissect the information given and will not have the benefit of an active mind. While listening, the brain releases chemicals like dopamine and serotonin. Serotonin is one of the key chemicals known as the happy hormone, because of its effect it has on our brain. It also allows the mind to be relaxed, and while listening to certain music can even put the mind in a state of rest. Putting the mind in a state of rest helps with sleep. The Sleep Foundation found that listening to music before you go to bed has proven to help you sleep longer and deeper. It has a direct effect on the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps your body relax and prepare for sleep. Relaxing music triggers changes in the body that in many ways mimic a sleep state. A slower heart rate, slower breathing, lower blood pressure are all physiological changes that make possible the process of falling asleep and staying asleep. Music also has a soothing effect on our emotional brain, easing stress and anxiety. Research done by surgeons across the world have shown that when a patient undergoing surgery hears calming music, it helps settle the mind. When a patient undergoes surgery and they hear calming music, they have lower blood pressure and need less pain medication than those who do not listen to soothing music. You do not have to be preparing for surgery to calm yourself with music, though. Simply listening to music can decrease your blood pressure, lower your levels of the stress hormone cortisol, and reduce your heart rate. It helps the body reach a state of homeostasis, allowing you to almost be free of all the worries of the world. In conclusion, life as we know it is constantly entangled by the flow of music and culture. It affects everything around us and our brain directly. It gives people a different outlook on life, invokes emotion into our lives, helps create and store memories, and releases chemicals to calm the mind and body, allowing it to rest. Listening to music gives our brain exercise and to keep it healthy and able to work as needed. By listening to music, there are positive results in the mind and body. Music gives the ability to break through the barrier of just simple thought. Thank you.
All right, Josh, how you feel?
Really good.
Okay, good. Okay, so what are your plans for next year?
Interesting question. So I'm either considering Texas A&M Corpus Christi or Texas Tech.
Okay, this has changed since we last talked.
Yes, it has.
So let's discuss that for a moment. So what's going on?
Apparently Texas A&M Corpus doesn't want me, and so they haven't responded yet. So I don't know how long I'll hold out.
So when you're saying you're choosing between the two, if they don't want you, have they chosen for you? Okay.
It's a backup.
Okay, all right. So I hope they call you back. So I think it'd be fun to go to class and then go fishing in the afternoon.
That's what I'm hoping.
That sounds good. Okay, so I just want to jump right into this kind of a different direction. Let's talk about Great Books 2.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. So I had you for Great Books 2. And so what was your experience like back then?
I would say for one, my first thought was, I hate English, I hate great books, I hate reading. And then I would say like going through the class ended up making me want to read more. Just It gave me a love for reading the books we have at the school. And I don't know if that, affected with anything I did like during the year or just thinking back after the year. But I would say it did give me a want to read the books that we have at the school.
Okay, because when you were in there, I had serious doubts you were going to make it through.
I remember multiple conversations with the whole class of a few of you, and then some direct eye contact. Will not be making.
Yeah. I think you and Landry got a lot of that. A lot of that. And so, I mean, did anything happen internally that you decided to do something different, or did you mature? What happened?
I think it was just the way that you and Conrad Eccles decided to teach the class, because a lot of what we learned the previous year was very fact-based, and I was like, well, I don't want to read this book just for facts. And then whenever we read it and we made direct correlations to what was happening like modern day, it made me interested in saying like, well, what can I see in other books that do this?
Okay, good. All right, so why this topic? Why did you choose this topic?
Contrary to popular belief, it has nothing to do with my dad.
Okay.
Something my mom always tells us is out of the mouth is the overflow of the heart. And she also constantly preaches with be careful what you watch, listen to, and just what you do in your day-to-day because it affects you. And music has always been something that I've had a love for, and it's been just something that I thought would be interesting to go the scientific route of what actually happens when you listen to music.
Okay, all right. So let's talk about this music thing for a little bit then. Tell me about your walk-up song.
So, like all 4 years or just this year?
Oh, yeah, I'd love to hear all 4 years.
Okay,
yeah.
All 4 years. My freshman year, I did Old Town Road because it was like my dad being the coach, and he was like, hey, you need to pick a walk-up song, meant, okay, I'll do it when I find time, not this is need to be done right now, because my coach is telling me to. Is like, my dad just said I need to do this, I'll do it later.
Yeah.
But I chose that one because it was just kind of like, oh, shoot, I need to pick one. And like that was like, I think the last song I listened to, so I just like, shoot, send that one.
Okay.
And then sophomore year, I can't really remember. We didn't get to do one because the season got cut short. But junior year, I did Big Iron by Marty Robbins, just because.
You don't need to tell me it's Marty Robbins.
Sorry.
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 That's good.
I picked that one because I thought it was hilarious because a big iron on your hip is referred to a gun, and I was carrying a bat. So, like a bat to a gunfight. I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
And then this year, I chose Swag Surfing because it's just fun, and I like to, dance a little bit.
Okay.
Makes me want to dance.
Yes, you have a little bit of that in you. Okay. So tell us about your own personal listening habits, like music. Yeah.
I listen to a lot of music. I would say I listen to basically all genres besides classical because I don't know, I can't do it.
You can't do it, or you won't do it?
Probably won't do it.
Okay.
I listen to probably a little too much music.
Okay.
And I'll definitely waste time because I'll be listening to music and being like, I can get this task done. But then I'll find myself singing the song or like, that's a really good song, I should play that next. And just like getting lost in just music itself.
Okay. So do you think, are there any songs that you, or genres or whatever you currently listen to that you think are detrimental to you?
I would definitely say rap. I do find myself listening to it every once in a while just because the beat is there and it makes you like, I don't know, the faster paced beat like makes you just faster pace in your mind.
Okay.
So it gets you like, especially for working out, like the faster pace is like, okay, bam, 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 bam. So like running, it'll make you speed up. And so I would say I do listen to that maybe too much more than I should.
Okay.
But I do find myself listening to that to be detrimental.
Okay, so how does that square with what you put in your oral about Philippians 4:8?
It is a personal conviction to myself,
Okay.
which is why I thought it would be impactful because I myself do struggle with it.
Okay.
It's not like a bad struggle, I would say, but listening to it and like the lyrics, it just doesn't speak anything about truth, beauty, and goodness. It only speaks mainly about worldly desires, and it just doesn't instill the right thoughts.
Okay, so what would you say to a person, because I've heard this argument always is like, I can listen to whatever music because I listen for the music, I don't listen to the lyrics. What would you say to that?
There's no possible way because your mind is literally separating it while you listen to it. And so like you can say, well, I only listen to music, and you have people saying they're more left brain and more right brain, which I think is true. But no matter what, that information is still in your head. It's like whenever you, like deja vu, I don't know how that works, but the information is there whether you know it or not.
Okay. What about another kind of common thing I hear from people is there's no good Christian music?
I would say that when they say there's no good Christian music, it's mostly because they're referring to it's too repetitive. But I would argue that the purpose is to be repetitive, because the more you hear a certain line, the more it's going to stick in your head and the more you'll think about it.
Okay. Now, so when people say Christian music, do you think that there's any such thing as just Christian music? Kind of like rock. Like if people say, well, all rock music is bad or all pop music is bad. Like, is it that simple?
No.
Okay.
I would say like most people consider Christian music because of what it talks about.
Okay.
Not like, because you can have like folk Christian music or classical Christian music or more pop Christian music, but they still consider that Christian music because of what it talks about. And I think that's the only genre that does that. I think like you can have country music, but then you say, well, this country music is now turned into a rock band. And so it's kind of like just, I think Christian music is the only genre that stays Christian because of what it talks about.
Okay. One last question, I'll pass it because there's just too many things I want to ask. So what music has been the most helpful or the most beneficial for you personally?
I would definitely say it is Christian music. It's Chris Renzema.
Okay.
And it's more like kind of a slower type music, but he just talks a lot about personal struggles that I have. So like one of the songs is Let the Ground Rest, and his big lyric in it is, if it's not right now, it's for the best. And that's something I struggle with and wanting to know the future.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, Josh. You say that truth can be affected by music in your paper, that we get this culture and then it decides what truth is, and then music maybe can tell us these things. Can you tell me something some truth that you get reinforced by listening to that's about that truth, music that's about that truth, whether it's Christian, whether it's whatever? Can you tell me any truths that you can think of that you go, oh, okay, yeah, that song reminds me of that?
I mean, it's pretty easy to go the Christian route, and you can definitely say, like, most of all, like, their main focus is give the glory to God, but I definitely don't hear that in most songs. That Christian, it's usually, like, personal struggles that artist or band has, that they're, like, basically saying, this is what we struggle with, and people resonate with that. I don't think of any personal song, or, like, any songs by themselves right now. I can think of, like, country music. Okay. A lot of its, like, drive is you want to be in life to where you can just sit down in front of the lake and just be there. That's what you want to strive for.
Okay. What about like historically? Are there any songs that you can think about that, I mean, you know a lot of songs. Can you think of any songs that you've listened to over the years, or you hear the oldies station or something that you've studied, you go, yeah, at that time in our history in America, this song was popular and it was trying to say this truth about whatever we think truth is at that time?
Sure. The first one that comes to mind is We Didn't Start the Fire, and it's a political satire, basically with whatever is going on in the world, and it's like really pushing for the government is bad, like release from the government. And it talks a lot about like the Cold War in it, and just saying that government is, the more government we allow in our lives, like the less freedom you'll have almost. And It's basically just saying like we didn't do this to ourselves.
Right. Okay. Can you sing a little bit of that for me?
Not at the moment.
Not right now. I would be remiss to not mention this. So when Court and Josh were about 10 years old, I volunteered to take Josh to San Angelo, and it was my first experience of being with Josh in a car. And so Court and I, when we travel, we say about 5 words to each other and just drive to where we're getting. But Josh doesn't. And he sat in the back, and every song that came on the radio, he sang. And we're amazed that, A, he can really sing well, and B, that he knows all these words to these songs. Do you think, so going back into this truth thing, do you think that music establishes the truth, or do you think most of the time there's some truth out there in society and these artists come along and hop on that to try to express it more?
I think it's most of the time there's a truth out there, and a lot of them are just saying, or some artists are trying to point you towards that truth, but if they're blatantly telling you this is the truth, it's really how much of it are you going to believe? But if you like listen to a song saying like, well, this is talking about this, and then you go out and say like, let me find the truth, you'll believe it more. And so I think a lot of the time it's pointing towards truth, but not directly telling you truth.
Okay. So do you think music is something that just enhances our life, or do you think it's I don't know how to describe it, but let's say there are certain priorities in life, like there could be physical things like food and water and that, or we could say the values or the disciplines like Luke shared. How does music, is it integral to everything, or does it just make everything else better or worse maybe?
I think it's both. I think it does make things better, and I think you can like play the downfall and say it makes things worse. Like if you listen to typically more sad music, you're only listening to lyrics that bring you down purposely. But I also think it is integral because it is affected by history and what's going on in the world around you. And so it is like very, very timely with what's going on. So like for instance, in quarantine, we saw a lot of music shift to more mellow, more slower, because life just moves slow when you're in quarantine.
Okay, and now let me just bring that over to, do you think there are people that just make life better that you're around? In other words, they're enhancers of life, and then there's some people who are more black and white and just say, no, this is the truth. This is how you got to live, right? And if you had to categorize yourself, which category would you put yourself in?
Definitely the enhancer.
Okay. Can you tell me how you enhance life?
For example,
Okay.
my good friend Hagen over here, he's very black and white, and he is very time scheduled. And like, if he doesn't want to do it, he's not doing it. And my job is to push him to do that thing. Okay. And a lot of the time, it involves like we're at camp and he doesn't want to go cliff jumping, and I said, I want to go cliff jumping. You're coming cliff jumping. Yeah. And so we didn't actually end up going cliff jumping that time, but it's a lot of the time of just like putting in like walking beside someone and like, I'm experiencing this joy and I want you to have it too.
And do you, man, I had a question right on the tip of my tongue. Have you been able to find value in that as you've grown and matured? Or do you sit there and go, gosh, I wish I could, I hate to say this, do you sit there and go, I wish I could be more like Hagen?
There's definitely times where I do both. I definitely do sit there sometimes like exhausted and like looking back and going, I wish I didn't do that. And then that's when I'm like, wish I was like Hagen and like not doing stupid stuff. But I definitely do think that I do find joy in like walking along people and getting them to do most of the time not smart stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So one more question. Do you think this love, because I think you have a love for music, right?
Right.
And you've been at a school where maybe you hadn't been able to develop that as far as being in a choir or having an instrument or those type things, but you have been able to listen to a lot of music. Do you think that the way you're built, is that an artistic thing? Do you think you're more artistic due to that, or do you think you're more engineer type due to that? And I know you're thinking about what you want to do in the future. How do you see those as either or do you see those at play with one another and they can coincide?
To be honest, I don't really know how to answer, because I do see myself more artistic with music, but I also see like the moving parts within songs, and like that's leaning more towards engineering, like listening to a certain instrument at this time, but then completely switching in the next verse and listening to how they play against each other and how they work well together. But that's more engineering. I don't know where I am in the middle of that, or it definitely doesn't have an effect on what I'm thinking about in the future. I've never thought about that, but I would definitely say I see both, because my dad being a band director for a while, I would go to his school when I was sick or we didn't have school, and he would have the beginning, they'd all warm up, and then he would have each section play at the beginning, and you would hear, and I would definitely think, that doesn't sound good, but then when he add it all together, it sounds really well, and I was always interested in why is an instrument by itself not appealing, but whenever it comes together, it is appealing.
Okay, thanks.
I think I want to shift the focus a little bit to where you discuss people with certain conditions. And why you mention maybe persons, probably most commonly elderly persons who have developed an Alzheimer's or a dementia, and that they can still maybe recognize something. Like I spend a lot of time with one of my husband's grandmothers, and she was an elementary school music teacher, and I just love her. I think she's great, and half the time she's like, "What's your name again?" And so she's definitely on that path, but I can bring her over and she'll sit down at the piano and just play all these things that she still remembers from 50 years ago. And it's really neat to listen to, and it's really enjoyable. But sometimes, it can be hard when you spend a lot of time with a person who is starting to lose some faculties. And I suppose my question, and I'm trying to phrase it more delicately, because I'm not trying to sound harsh or insensitive, but considering the image of God and how we are made in His image, can we kind of consider these two things where a person is beginning to lose certain things, but when they sit down to an instrument or they hear something and it brings all these things back up to the surface, I think one of the conversations that gets had is the value of life. And when certain people start to lose things, how can we talk about maybe the value of life in that particular situation or in that context with the image of God?
I think
Does that make sense?
A little bit. I think worldly, we see value of life of what you add to society, and then as you age, and then say you do have Alzheimer's, you can't remember, or you can't do anything really because you just can't go back to remembering hard facts, and so that you have to completely restart almost every conversation you have. And so worldly, that's seen as you don't add anything to society. But kingdom of God wise, we were in the Garden of Eden, and then we had sin and we fell, and so now when you die, God gives us a resurrected body. And I think that's just saying that right now, our bodies that we have are not meant to be eternal beings, and that is going to say that time and age will also have an effect on that, because we are not meant to be eternal beings in this state that we are now. And so I think that's one of the main points of why we get a resurrected body, is because if we had a eternal body, then why would we need God? Because we can live forever.
Okay. I like your answer. I want to ask a different, maybe on a lighter note. The Bible tells us to make a joyful noise. I was in Psalms this morning, and 57, 7 and 8. My heart is steadfast, O God, my heart is steadfast. I will sing, indeed I will sing. I will sing psalms. Awake, my glory. Awake, O harp and lyre. I will awake in the dawn. Not all of us are gifted musically. And I think the Lord has a sense of humor. Do you think the Lord ever hears a song and is just like,
I personally do that. So what I find interesting is if you go to churches that have Stonegate, for example, they have a pretty big congregation. And it's like whenever the music is being played, you can hear the people on the side like next to you, and like you can think, well, wow, this doesn't really sound very good. But let's say the performer on stage steps back and you hear the whole congregation together. That sounds good because everyone's voices are taking parts from other people, and they're just, what do you call it? They're complementing each other. So like, say the person next to me it's the whole thing with harmony. If there's a note that's lower and you play the higher note, they kind of have the same frequency and they sound good playing together. And then you say, I think it's not it is personal when you praise the Lord, but it is congregation-wise because you're praising with humanity. It's not, you are praising personally, but it's going to be heard as if the whole world is crying out. Okay. I think. I really don't know.
Okay. No, I like that answer because I like the idea of, make a joyful noise as one body. I guess, I don't know. I read that this morning and I was just like, he's going to sing, he's got a couple of instruments, and he's going to awaken the dawn. He's going to be loud. It might not be good. And that's just kind of where my mind was going. And so my next question was, what does it mean to make a joyful noise?
I think the joyful noise comes from the heart behind it. And so if I go out and I say, I'm going to go praise the Lord, and I sing and it sounds awful, but the heart behind it is there, that I'm there to praise the Lord, I think that's what makes it the joyful noise. I don't think it's the sound that you make. I think it's the heart behind it.
Okay, so would you agree that there is, balance is not the right word, but there's a consideration of excellence versus faithfulness? Yes,
I do think excellence can only take you so far, and then faithfulness and excellence together work well together, and then they add on to that. They build off of each other.
Can you think of an example where you were not excellent in something, but you were faithful, and it came out of a pure heart, and it was appreciated?
I would say basketball. I'm not very good at basketball, but I wasn't, and then I stuck with it, and I don't know, I stuck with it, and I've progressed now, and I can say that I'm an average basketball player. I'm not atrocious, but I do think that the excellence was built off of the faith behind Mr. Miller's going to shape me to be a better basketball player.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I realize that in some of the panels I've been on, I haven't mentioned C.S. Lewis, so it's time to make up for lost time. So have you read the Narnia series?
I have.
Okay. So do you remember in Magician's Nephew when Aslan is creating Narnia? Do you remember that section?
I do remember The Magician's Nephew, but I cannot remember exactly when he's creating Narnia.
Okay, so there's a group of individuals who have shown up, and it's just like dark. And then Aslan begins to create Narnia, and then he creates it with song. So he sings creation into existence there in Narnia. What do you think C.S. Lewis is seeking to communicate through that idea?
I really don't know. If I think about it, you go through all of this mythology, and you see Sing to Me, O Muse, and you have all of this song behind everything. And then when you talk about use song to create, I don't know how you would put that together, or how, because I know Aslan is representative of the Lord,
right?
And so I don't know if he's saying that when the Lord spoke creation into existence, it sounded like song, or when the Lord spoke creation into existence, it came it's also creating song with it, and he's...
Do you think it's possible? Do you think it's possible that when God spoke the universe into existence, he did it through song?
I think it is possible. I don't know if we can ever truly know until we get to heaven.
Right. But what would that communicate about God? I mean, because we obviously have song. Where do you think song came from? Where do you think music came from?
The Lord.
Okay. Why?
We did mention it in Book of Revelation class that... we mentioned it that
you had to do it.
Satan is he was an angel of song, and that was eternally his downfalls, he wanted the praise to come to him instead of him praising.
Yeah.
And so I think it's been there since the beginning.
Right. It is interesting too, like people, putting Old Testament scriptures together, they think that actually Satan was the worship leader of heaven. So it's always a warning to pastors: watch out for your worship leaders. But it's interesting to consider that, right? And so, does that excite you, thinking about God may have created the universe through song?
It does, because I do find myself like, I don't want to say, it kind of sounds weird, but I do like get chills when I listen to songs and like certain things. I'm like, "Whoo, that's a good note."
Yeah.
And so it is inspiring to think if the Lord like sung creation into existence. Like, what does that mean for like? How does that play into what heaven's going to look like?
Right.
Yeah. Is it a musical, or is it just?
Is it a musical? That'd be hell for some people. But so I think there is an element, though, right, where we see throughout the book of Revelation, there's all kinds of songs, right? There's worshiping the Lord. There's all of that. So it's exciting to think about. Now, it's interesting, Screw Tape Letters, since we're on the C.S. Lewis bent here, it talks about in Screw Tape Letters, have you read that?
I have.
Okay. That there's only, in heaven, it's either music or silence. Okay? And then, but that all hell can produce is noise. And so I just want to read a quote from this and see what you think. This is what Screwtape writes. He says, noise, the grand dynamism, the audible expression of all that is exultant, ruthless, and virile. Noise which alone defends us from silly qualms, despairing scruples, and impossible desires. We will make the whole universe a noise in the end. We have already made great strides in this direction as regards the earth. The melodies and silences of heaven will be shouted down in the end. But I admit that we are not yet loud enough, or anything like it. Research is in progress. And so the question to ask you is do you think that this world loves noise?
I do. I do think that it is like you want to hear something, because obviously Mrs. Shelward did talk about it in the pastoral, that like silence is awkward. And so it's kind of, I do think that there's something, like you want to hear something, like you're always going to want to have an answer for certain questions. Mm-hmm. But I do think the whole thing of hell only causing noise can be like, so song is inherently appealing to the ears, whether you like the genre or not. And then, but just noise, like we can take the construction workers outside, when you hear that, it's not appealing and you don't want to hear it anymore. And so I think if what it's trying to say is if the world can fill people with enough noise that they don't want to hear, they'll just tune out all noise by itself.
Okay. So then what's the distinction between noise and music?
That kind of goes into musical theory a little bit,
okay,
of like what notes sound together and why you put them in that certain order. And so I would say like distinguishes, it have to be, I don't know, they have to play against each other. And so a lot of the times dissonance and harmony play along with each other. Like as you travel farther along in a song, it's making you want to hear that original note to bring in some like clarity or fulfillment.
Okay. Interesting. All right, let's shift gears. A few quick rapid-fire questions. What would be the theme song of this thesis?
Of this thesis? Shoot. I really don't know. Let's come back to me on that one.
Okay. What would be the theme song of the senior class?
The senior class definitely has to be a cappella, because there's a lot of different voices trying to voice their opinion. And so I'll definitely have to go with a pentatonic song. I don't know what it would be, but it would definitely be a cappella.
Okay, good. All right, so here's rapid fire. Hagen famously made some, scout. You were going to be the scout,
yes.
Remember yesterday? We'll leave that. Are you going to form a rock band from your class? So real quick, lead singer.
Lead singer, I would have to go... From my class?
Yeah, your class.
My class, okay. I have to go with Kmart.
Okay. Oh, nice. The mullet. Yeah, all right, okay.
But the lead singer is also like the face of the band.
Okay.
So like when you see Kmart, you're like, I'm interested. I want to go see that. Whether it's good or not, you're going to get sales.
Okay. Electric guitar.
Electric guitar, probably Court.
Okay.
Because, he's got the charisma to where you can just kind of stand there and look like he's not trying very hard, but it's going to sound really good.
Well, that's going to make it hard then, because who's going to play bass?
Bass, shoot. I would say Hagen, just because I think it'd be hilarious to see Hagen play the bass and just like facial reactions. But I'm gonna stick him on the kit, keep him on drums.
Okay, keep him. Okay, Hagen on drums. Okay,
Right. Probably Clayton, because I just think it'd be funny just to see the head bob.
Okay, very good. Okay, and then lastly, keyboard.
I would play keyboard, obviously.
Okay, gotcha. It sounded like the world's worst boy band right there.
We would get sales. We would make money.
All right, I'll pass it on.
Don't know how long our career would be.
I have no idea what I'm going to ask now after that, in a good way. Okay, can you tell me other ways that we worship God?
We talked about it earlier a little bit. We can worship through prayer, supplication, and then you can also say, like, I personally worship through music. I do find myself listening to worship songs, but then not getting true, like just listen to it. When I sing, I really feel like I'm worshiping, and that's what I would say personally. That's for me, but I would say like thoughtfulness, just kind of acknowledging that I can do this because of the gift I've been given.
Okay, so any other ways we worship God besides?
There's a lot of them. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Okay, so like if you go to a national park and you see these mountains and all this stuff, do you worship God somehow?
Through admiration, yes.
Okay. If you... so why is it that our brains go to, most of the time when we think about worshiping God, it's just singing praise songs to Him?
I would say it goes back to the start of the church whenever they said, now we're going to sit down and have worship, and the first thing that comes after that is song.
Okay.
And so that's just what we think about now, just because of when you go to church, when they say this is worship, it's only song.
Why did the first church say this is going to be worship? Why were they drawn to do that? What?
I think as a congregation, it's easy to see like praise and worship, as you can, like with a congregation, that's the easiest thing to do together is through song. It'd be really hard to take like a congregation and say, look at this mountain, and then have people immediately think this is for God. They could say like, well, that's a pretty cool mountain, just like look at the landscapes, but the first thought, like when you do worship through song, the first thought is usually God.
Do you think there are individuals that just go worship God by singing to Him? Or do you think it's just a corporate thing?
I think it can be personal. I think some people do find worshiping through song, like myself, more easier, or not more easier, like just more natural than having to say, I'm going to look at creation, and that's how I'm going to praise through God. But I think it needs to be, you can do all of them. I just think whatever comes natural is usually song, because it's so widespread in today's culture.
Okay, so can you think of any other reason that we would tie this singing or music and then our relationship with God together? Is there a biblical example of that? And why would those two things be tied together?
I mean, Ms. Harvey just mentioned, I'll make a joyful noise for the Lord.
Okay.
Tied together?
Like music and then the Lord. What can you think of any biblical characters that...
David was heavy into song, poetry.
Okay. And what's David known for?
The heart after God.
Okay. So is there something special about this idea of music and singing, and then truth being sung, and it actually being something that the heart it's something to port about? Do you see the correlation there between those three things: truth, heart, and music? And can we get there in other ways? Or is music the only way we get to exhibit that? I
think you can get there all sorts of ways. I just think it's easy through song. I mentioned, what's it called? Music takes what we know to be true in our head and moves it to our heart. And so I think it has something to do with emotions in it. So like if you listen to a song and it is head knowledge that you know that this is true, but it's constantly repeated, and you can see it through the emotion of the artist or the composer saying, like, I'm pouring out everything to tell you that this is true. It moves it to, like I would say, it moves it to your heart, saying, if he's giving everything he has to tell this to me, it has to be true.
Mm-hmm. We could go on about like joyful noise and your heart being right and singing a song that's excellent for the Lord. So when is it okay to be a horrible singer but your heart's completely right and do worship at church?
All the time.
All the time? So it's not distracting it to you at all if somebody's leading worship that can't carry a tune?
It is distracting. But if the whole purpose is to praise our creator of the world, I would say that is acceptable. Like, who am I to judge if he sounds terrible, but he is praising the Lord?
Well, I can judge. It sounds terrible.
Well, yeah. But, like, we can judge, but what effect does that have on him praising the Lord?
It has an effect on everybody that's out there that can't sing.
Okay. So, if you're looking at somebody who has the courage to
they're leading worship, Josh.
Okay.
Don't they have a job to do?
Hear me out.
What if he were designing airplanes and you were getting ready to go get in an airplane?
Well, that's two different topics. We're talking about
right,
singing and flying planes.
I mean, his heart's right, but man, I don't know that wing goes there.
That's like two different topics.
Is that not similar?
Not at all.
What? Let's bring it personal here.
I want to get in on this one.
So what if your dad's? I mean, he's
atrocious.
Tone deaf. Okay, but he wants to be a band director.
It's not going to be a very good band.
But his heart's right, and he really wants to do it. Does that not apply to music and worship? Or?
It does, but I would say the band may suck, but personally, those kids will get an experience out of it that changes their lives.
Okay, so personally it's okay, but when you start inflicting it on everybody else, that might not be okay? Or maybe just nobody listens to you?
I would say it depends on the stage you're on. So, like, for example, the worship. If you can look at somebody who can't sing, but their whole purpose is to praise the Lord, I think you can get behind that.
Yeah.
Or I personally can.
Yeah.
But if you're paying money to go say, I'm going to go see this person in concert and it's terrible, then you're going to be like, well, that was awful. I wasted my money. That's terrible.
Yeah.
But I think it depends on the stage that you're on.
Depends on the context of what you're trying to accomplish. Okay, good. Okay, I think you've been a little, Josh, you seem to be a little stuffy today on your oral compared to the way I know you. So I want to ask you a couple of questions. I do want to ask you one more question because I probably won't get a chance to ask any more. So on a less, you want the serious part first, or do you want the...
It's up to you.
Okay, serious part first. So, basketball was not easy for you.
Mm-mm.
And I'm going to broach a subject that I'm not sure everybody out here knows about, but, I mean, all the players know about it. But you came to practice for multiple years at 5:45 in the morning, and you would have to leave practice pretty regularly to go lose your lunch.
Yep.
Looking back on that, do you think that was a kind of a psychological thing? Do you think it was physical? Do you think it was a combination of both? And how did you overcome it?
I think it's a little bit of both. I have pretty bad acid reflux, and so that would basically, my body thinks I need to produce stomach acid when I don't.
Okay.
So then that creates heartburn, and then like the only way that I found like to get rid of it was to just throw it up.
To lose it.
Right. And so that's what I would do. But then I had the psychological thing of like, well, I could take a break from running if I just, went outside and threw up a little bit. So I think that does play a fact into it. But then like senior year, I would just pop Tums and I wouldn't feel it anymore, so I didn't really have to.
Yeah. So sometimes it became a habit.
Right.
Right. And yet it's not fun coming to practice every morning and then having to go do that, right?
Nope.
Why did you keep doing it? I mean, or not keep losing your lunch, but why did you not quit?
Number one, my dad wouldn't let me. Number two, relationships I had with people. When you like look at people who are going through hard things, and you can see just accountability of, well, I know when the going gets hard, they're not going to quit, or I can count on them because they're not going to fumble under pressure.
Okay. And then a fun question just to wrap up my time. So I think you do enhance life in a great way. And one way that you always want to enhance life is like after you make a shot or do something on the basketball court, and you want to let everybody know how wonderful it is and how great it is for the team. So what's your go-to celebration dance or gesture?
It really depends on what I did. So let's say if I score a layup, I'm, not a tall guy, not a very strong guy. So I usually put my hand up my knee, telling people they're too small to guard me, right?
Okay.
And so that's pretty cocky, and I would say, not very good for most of the teams who play in our district because they were really bad. Uh-huh. But I would also say a classic bow and arrow when I make a 3-pointer, or just really anything I can think of when I do something.
Uh-huh. Well, I've seen the eye. What's this one?
That one was something that we did when we were kids, and it's kind of hilarious.
Okay. And then what's the one where you squat down?
That's the one I was talking about, telling people they're too short to guard me.
Too small. Okay, too small. And the great thing is that some people calculate this, right, to plan it. And maybe you have sat in your room and planned that, but it never looks planned. It always looks spontaneous. And it's so fluid and normal that it's amazing to me.
You have two different opinions because you think it's hilarious, and your son Court gets on to me every time.
Well, I don't want to demean the other team either, but
I usually get in trouble.
But I do like your entertainment. So.
It's hard to take it back to the serious side of things. Checking the clock for anyone who wants to know. Okay, so I'll keep it kind of on the lighter side. I noticed in your speech and in your paper you talk about playing songs kind of induces physiologically a sleep state, just kind of mellows out, decreases blood pressure. And then you also mentioned sitting here at the table, you put it on to do homework.
Are you asking if that's a good thing or if I can do that?
I kind of think it's funny. I need to sit down and get this done, but I'm going to put on this music, and then I'm going to get so sleepy. And I will say, I know you're not the only one, and I've been here 3 years now, and music comes up with all the students every year, and even with one student this year, the hours upon hours upon hours that music is played. I wanted to comment on that. I just thought it was kind of comical.
See, I put it in the paper because I was doing research. That's what I found. But I personally cannot listen to music before I go to bed because I'll tend to find myself singing it, and then I'll be more awake than I was before. And then doing homework, I used to use it because I was like, I do not want to do this homework. So I'm going to turn on this song to basically, I'll think about this song, and then hopefully the homework comes to me, just doing it. And it usually, the number, for math homework, the numbers I would get in my head would be like, that looks about right. That's reasonable. And then I'd turn it in, and it was not anywhere close.
Okay. Okay, so you remember sophomore year, we had Music Fridays in pre-cal. I don't know do you remember this? Every Friday, one person was assigned a song in the last 5 minutes.
I remember, but then we didn't do it because of COVID.
We did it for a couple months.
That I don't remember at all.
Okay. Well, I still think I'm leading up to this quote from Martin Luther that you had, because most of the songs that the students picked, I'd never heard of. I think most of the songs that I liked, y'all either had never heard of or thought they were trash. And that's fair. But in your paper, you reference Martin Luther, and you say, show me a generation's songs, and I will show you what they believe. What would you say are the songs of your generation?
It's hard to pick, specific songs or what they're preaching towards.
What they're preaching towards. Let's go with that first.
Okay. So a lot of what they're preaching towards is you don't really need anybody else. You can do it all by yourself. The American dream, chase the money, and then everything else will kind of fall into place. Or I have so much money that I'm either not fulfilled, or look at how great I am because of how much money I've gained.
And I feel like for me, there's it's hard to talk about the two together. Some music that worships the Lord and then secular songs. So let's shift it a little bit because we were talking about praise and worship. Why do you think different denominations approach music differently?
I think for the exact reason of the like obvious break between Christian music and then music of the world. And so I think like if you can think of typical Southern Baptist churches, you would say that music is a bad thing, and like they would say dancing is a bad thing, and then they would say because music causes you to dance, then music is bad. And so then they would play this like, I don't know, there's no words, there's only instruments, and like it's your job to praise the Lord because look how great music sounds together, and that's only because the Lord did it that way, which is true. But I think there is the cultural break between listening to music and listening to like praise and worship music. There's the obvious break between what they preach about, and it's very easy to say, well, I'm just listening for musical quality, and then not realizing what it's speaking to you.
Okay. But, I mean, let's just say, for example, my husband says Methodists have the best music. And we're not Methodists, but he always says that. He says they play the best hymns. And then I'm, Southern Baptist and even Church of Christ, they don't have any music. Some churches have straight up traditional. Some have no instruments, just the vocal. And then they're contemporary music. And then you hear people say, I would like to go, I enjoy this church because I like their music. Do you think the Lord has an opinion, or what do you think the Lord thinks about us following our preferences?
I think your preference can affect how you worship. So if you go to a church and you do not like the music, the first thought is, this music is terrible. And your first thought will not be praising the Lord. So if you follow your preference and say, this music is good and I can praise the Lord, I would say that he would think that's a good thing, because your first thought is praise and worship and not, man, this is terrible. And so I think following your preference, there is I'm not going to say it, there is a healthy medium. And so there is a healthy medium, and so following your preference can get you to, well, I like this speaker, but the speaker doesn't do a good job of pointing things back to the Lord, but you like the way he talks, and so you would go listen to him. Otherwise, then maybe I don't like the way this guy talks very much, but he's preaching what I need to hear.
Okay. And then just to finish, just on a lighter note maybe, is there a song that makes you emotional? Which song is it? Would you be willing to share? Are
you going like sad, happy, angry?
Just in the context of hits you the hardest.
Oh, hits me the hardest? It'd have to be sad then. Shoot. I would definitely. It's probably Robin Hood by Anson Seabra, and it basically speaks about how this guy gives his everything to like somebody, and they like just take it all. Like, he gives the best of him, and then he's left with nothing. And so it's kind of like, for me, I find a lot of my worth in friendships and relationships with people, and I can see, like, as, like, I'll pour everything into it, but I'm not getting the same thing in return. I'm thinking, well, they're using me for my qualities, and I'm not getting anything in return. I'm left with nothing.
Okay. Thank you. I think we're ready for you to kind of put us on the spot.
Okay, so I think we can either do two if we have time, but the one I really want to ask is, it's a question for all three of you. So it's, what's the earliest memory you have that's connected to music? So like, what's one song that you can remember, and like, where are you? Be as specific as possible, like as early as you can think about. So for example, for me, I'm in my dad's band hall, and it's the theme song to Polar Express. And I'm sitting on top of the lockers that they put all their instruments in, laying down and just like playing in the dust. But it's like, I can remember exactly where I am, exact time, but like be as specific as possible.
I think I'll answer this. You got to have the golden mean of the.
I was trying so hard.
Answer. I just couldn't let them be like that. Okay. So it's really interesting. I've been around teenagers my whole life. My parents taught for 41 years at the same high school, and so teenagers were always around. And then my dad, he grew up in the 50s and graduated high school in 66. So all of that kind of music, that's all I heard growing up, was just oldies. Beach Boys, Elvis. So the first song I ever learned was Teddy Bear by Elvis Presley. And so I used to sing that, and then when teenage girls would come over, as a little boy, I would sing that to them. And so that was kind of my thing back in the day. That's one of my earliest memories. And then just with my dad, like learning those songs. And so I think that was a thing like he and I could connect over. And like that I would show him that I knew these songs and I would sing those songs. And then as I got a little older but still pretty young, my sister and I and some friends used to perform the different Will Smith songs back in the day when he had his own little band. And so those were a lot of fun doing those things. So.
Well, my family, my dad played the guitar, very musical, great voice, just great voice, and could sing harmony or melody. And he had 9 in his family, or 10 brothers and sisters, 9 brothers and sisters, 10 total, and they all played instruments. And so music was just really important in our family growing up, and my mom could sing very well too. But I never sang. My sister was older than I was, and she sang all the time. And it's like my parents would say she came out of, she was born singing. And so all of her attention, she got a lot of attention because of singing. And we'd be at different places, and she'd get up and sing for people, and she was quite a bit older than I was. And I watched all this, and I can remember 5th grade, I came home, and they were having a talent show at my elementary school. And I came home, and all I'd done up to this point was like play sports. That was my life. And I came home and I told my mom, I said, I'm going to enter the talent show. And she's like, looks at me literally and goes, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm gonna sing a song. And so I don't know if that's my first memory, but that was the first time that I ever thought I'm gonna sing something. But we sang in the car everywhere we went. We sang, and that's just kind of how we did life. And so singing has been super important in my life, and it helped us overcome a lot of family issues through song. So.
I think my earliest memories is probably anything early as 90 country. I mentioned earlier one time I was, not today, but with my dad a lot. So anytime we were in the truck, the radio was on 100.3. And I just remember like Randy Travis, Pam Tillis, Vince Gill. Those guys, we lived outside of Houston, so we went to the Houston Rodeo every year, so seeing like Reba McEntire with her giant red hair and whatever outfit she showed up in. Or I remember being little and being at a Clay Walker rodeo, and the women were you couldn't even hear the music because the women were just so loud. And I think that's probably what I remember the most. Even now, I think it's Pam Tillis, the Shake the Sugar Tree song, and I still sing it, and I get made fun of for it all the time.
That's good. You want to go to prayer?
Oh, yes. Lord, we thank you for this past hour. We thank you for Josh. We thank you for his message that we got to listen to, and we thank you that we got to see more of him. For me, certainly another side. It's always a joy to learn about people and to your creation and to see you in your creation. And we just thank you for his parents, for his friends and his family that are here. We thank you just for this beautiful day that we got to listen to him. We pray that as he goes on, he continues to walk in you through his next plans, whatever they may be to finalize. And we love you, Father. Amen.